you seem to be well versed in history. You've cited several books so far in our conversation, and your job title is visionary. So I'm curious about the process of which you continue to seek out new knowledge, and also sort of where you are doing experiments, or where you're applying your own creativity. If you could speak to either of those.
Well, I'm a voracious reader. And so, I continue to read aggressively and broadly. I don't read a lot of fiction. Most of it's nonfiction, but I read very broadly and eclectically, and it's in the reading eclectically that you're able to connect broader dots, if you will. If you view your information base, let's say as a tool belt. Let's say you got a tool belt here, and the different things that are different tools on that tool belt. You have a much better chance of completing a project if you have more tools on your belt. And in fact, a project that you wouldn't want to tackle if all you had on your belt was a hammer becomes possible if you have a hammer, a saw, and a screwdriver, right? And so I think that there's a facilitation, or an accelerator, if you will, an accelerator in our brains when we get more things in our tool belt. And so we're talking about reading history, business, self-improvement, obviously, farming, hardcore farming, for me, how to manage grass, those kinds of things, including visiting people, going to seminars, listening to podcasts. Okay. But this is all part of stocking additional tools on our informational tool belt. And that then creates a project. It creates broader project opportunities that you wouldn't have if you had a much more simplistic tool belt. So how do I feed my own imagination? It's by reading the imagination of others. And what are other people? I mean, there's really nothing new, right? We just put things together differently. There's really nothing new under the sun. It's just how we synthesize it. And so I'm just looking for broad ideas that I can customize to my own situation, and say, we could maybe try that. I mean, a great example is, for example, pasture cropping. Pasture cropping was developed by an Australian guy named Colin Seis, and it came out of a crisis. He had a fire go through. He's a sheep and a small grain farmer in Australia, and a fire came through and burned all of his equipment. It burned his wheat crop. It burned his wheat storage bins, burned everything. So he wakes up the next morning and says, well, man, what am I going to do now? And so he decided to see if he could start with as little machinery as possible. So he used his sheep to eat the grass and actually weaken it. I don't want to belabor this, but he used the animals as a sod weakening tool strategically long enough that he could get a wheat crop in, or barley, or small grain. And I actually visited his farm, and it was we're standing in this beautiful field of oats. It looks as beautiful as anything, but there was no tillage, no fertilizer, and the sod had not been killed. It was still under there. So then when he went and harvested the oats, the grass was already coming, and he was able to graze it with the sheep. So he was able to get 2 crops instead of 1 in the season. And the one that he got with the sheep added so much manure that it would fertilize. And then, he'd do that for like 4 or 5 years, and then he'd raise another wheat crop in that field. So we brought that here. Now, we didn't raise wheat. We didn't need wheat, but we wanted to fill our summer slump niche with when things got dry and hot. What is something we can grow an annual that we could grow in our perennial to fill that summer slump, in late July and early August? Well, Sudex. Sudex is a Sudan sorghum hybrid, hot, heat tolerant grass, tropical grass. Okay. So we went out with the cows. We didn't have sheep, but we did with the cows what Colin did with the sheep, and weakened the sod enough to get this Sudex in. The Sudex grew 8 feet tall. My goodness, we ran 100 cows on a quarter of an acre through that stuff in late July, early August. It was tremendous. It was massive material. Put all this biomass on the ground, did not kill the sod, did not require any fertilizer. The cows were happy. They got all these wonderful carbohydrates in July when they're starving for carbohydrates, and it added 30 tons per acre of manure and urine just from the grazing animal. And so those are the kinds of things. If you're reading, if you're listening to podcasts, if you're traveling, if you're going to visit mentors, if you're in that seeking mode, you will find those little breakthroughs that will let you punch through your wall. And it's a really neat thing.
Wow, that's fantastic.